Tonight's headlines: missile plot against U.S. plane uncovered. Iraqi ambushes lead to deadly clashes with civilians. Internet worm crashes computers round the world. Also tonight, the economy is still struggling. Many ask, has Dr. Greenspan lost his touch? A reality check on the California governor's race. Why are so many trying to win a no-win job? And guess who's coming to dinner at her home? Just about everybody.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. One of the great concerns of Homeland Security officials in this country is that a terrorist might get his hands on a shoulder-fired missile and try to shoot down a jetliner. Tonight, federal agents say they've broken up a plot to sell such missiles inside the United States. It's a late-breaking story, and CBS News correspondent Bob Orr in Washington has late details. Bob?
Dan, sources say a British arms dealer and at least 2 other men now have been arrested in a year-long sting operation for selling a surface-to-air missile to undercover federal agents. Sources say the dealer was secretly videotaped as he made his sales pitch, bragging about the weapon's ability to bring down a commercial jetliner. Then today, the dealer, who's of Indian descent, was arrested in Newark, New Jersey with the missile in his possession. The FBI now has the missile, described as a Russian-made Igla, a state-of-the-art infrared shoulder-fired weapon that is accurate to a range of about 3 miles. The arrest was part of an international sting operation involving agents from the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the FBI, Customs, as well as British and Russian authorities. Officials say the arms dealer is not a terrorist and not affiliated with al-Qaeda. The proposed deal apparently was strictly a money-making venture. The sources say the dealer believed he was selling the missile to a Muslim extremist. The arrests come as federal agents are wrapping up an assessment of the vulnerability of major U.S. airports to shoulder-fired missiles. 35 of 55 U.S. airports have been completed, as well as 3 large overseas airports in Manila, Athens, and Istanbul. The operation began after terrorists tried and failed to shoot down an Israeli jetliner last November as it took off from Mombasa, Kenya. And it followed U.S. intelligence, which revealed that al-Qaeda was seeking to target Western jetliners. Now, there have been some reports that the arms dealer was involved in some kind of plot to bring down Air Force One. However, U.S. officials at the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the White House all strenuously deny that. Security sources say there was no specific plot against any airliner, but they also concede it's very alarming that someone was able to smuggle the lethal weapon into the U.S. and then willing to shop it to would-be terrorists. Dan?
Bob Orr in Washington, thank you. U.S. forces in Iraq today captured 2 more of the most wanted members of Saddam Hussein's regime. An Iraqi army commander and one of Saddam's bodyguards were among those arrested in a raid near Tikrit. Also today, the top U.S. general in Iraq announced that U.S. troops will serve 1-year rotations there, leaving the country only for short rest periods. Attacks around Iraq today killed 1 U.S. soldier and wounded at least 5. Such attacks have soldiers on edge and ready to shoot, but as CBS's Kimberly Dozier reports tonight, that can lead to tragedy.
When Ali Mohsen started his day, he was changing tires. By evening, he lay dead, caught in the crossfire on a Baghdad street, shot by U.S. troops. The soldier said he was one of a group throwing grenades at them. But even the American's Iraqi translator believes they got the wrong man.
So you don't think he's a militant or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. But, you know, these guys, they think he's a good guy.
They shoot on him by mistake.
American soldiers here say if they don't react quickly with deadly force, they pay with their lives. Ordinary Iraqis say instead they're paying with theirs.
We also have to remember that we have a responsibility to protect our soldiers and not to have them die unnecessarily. And there are in combat operations always going to be mistakes.
U.S. soldiers are jittery for a reason. They're under virtual siege with more American casualties today. So they're going on the offensive. Troops have rounded up dozens of Saddam loyalists and thousands of illegal weapons. Little comfort at Ali Mohsen's home. The family said U.S. soldiers searched his house for weapons after he'd been killed and found none. His mother said he'd never even fired a gun. Before, I had nothing against them, she said. Now, I hate them. The Americans are worse than Saddam Hussein, this neighbor said. Once his traditional enemies, they're now vowing revenge against America. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Baghdad.
Israel says it is now prepared to put the U.S.-backed peace plan on hold after 2 Israelis were killed today in 2 suicide bombings. Both bombers were Palestinian teenagers, one striking at a grocery store in suburban Tel Aviv, the other at a bus stop near a Jewish settlement on the West Bank. About a dozen people were injured. Internet users everywhere are scrambling to secure their computers from a fast-moving new infection, a web worm that has already struck businesses, government offices, and home users worldwide. It's called Blaster, and as CBS's Jim Axelrod reports, when it finds an unprotected computer, it strikes.
The computer worm turned in Maryland, emptying the state's Motor Vehicle Administration.
We had to close all of our offices, all 23 offices statewide.
And Seattle, where William Thompson spent 2.5 hours talking to tech support.
Well, you got to kind of laugh at it, I guess. You know, it was probably done by a 13-year-old.
And everywhere in between, America's been bit by the blaster worm. Unlike a virus, which comes by email and infects your computer only if you open it, a worm hits every computer that's vulnerable. Since it spreads via the internet, just being online makes you susceptible.
I keep getting the same message, and it just freezes the screen, and it just doesn't do anything.
Only computers using Microsoft operating systems are vulnerable. But that's not good news. In fact, just the opposite. Microsoft has 90% of the desktop market, and some estimate the reach of this worm to be 50% of all computers worldwide.
We've got a problem here. The worm shuts down computers using Microsoft operating systems NT 4.0, Windows 2000, Windows XP, or Windows Server 2003. A hidden message ridicules Microsoft. Billy Gates, why do you make this possible? Stop making money and fix your software.
I think people like to poke fun at Bill Gates because even though he has the most popular software, it's just as insecure as everyone else's software out there.
Fixing the problem is relatively easy. A patch is available at Microsoft.com that will keep the worm out. Of course, that could have been done weeks ago, when warnings were first issued that were largely ignored. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
On the CBS Market Watch, the Federal Reserve voted today to keep short-term interest rates right where they are, saying the U.S. economy is starting to turn around. That news gave Wall Street a boost. The Dow gained another 92 points today, the NASDAQ 25. Even though the word on Wall Street may be recovery, the average man and woman on the street is still feeling the pinch, as Anthony Mason reports.
Alan Greenspan wants the economy to turn sharply, so the Fed promised today to keep interest rates low for a considerable period.
You've got to see the closet space.
But if you've been shopping for a house, you know the cost of borrowing money has suddenly soared. A 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, which hit a 41-year low in June, is up a full point since then. And that's not what the Fed chairman had in mind.
After all, this is an economy that is still struggling to keep its head above water. And that big a rise in interest rates is not wanted.
Decreasing the rate by 1 3/8.
Low rates fueled a refinancing boom that's put billions back in consumers' pockets and kept them spending. The economy could handle higher interest rates if it was creating jobs.
I'm out of work. I have 2 degrees and I've been unemployed for a year.
But so far, it isn't.
Without jobs, consumer spending, which has been holding this economic ship afloat, will peter out. Economic growth will falter. So we've got to have more jobs.
The biggest increase in defense spending since the Korean War helped GDP jump nearly 2.5% in the second quarter. But Greenspan has never faced so much fire over his command of the economy.
I think you just don't know what's going on in the real world. And I would urge you, come with me to Vermont, meet real people.
Greenspan, once the Pied Piper of the economy, seems to be having trouble getting it to follow his tune.
The tarnish on his image, and there is a little at the moment, will, I think, pass. And we'll look back on Greenspan as the finest Federal Reserve Chairman we've ever had.
But some have complained the Fed hasn't been sending clear signals about its policy. That's why mortgage rates are up. Well, Greenspan's message today was very clear. The Fed's rates will stay low for a while. Dan?
Anthony Mason, thanks a lot. The California recall election is now 8 weeks away, and polls show movie star Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger the frontrunner in this new race for governor. With that status comes a lot of attention, but also now, as CBS's Jerry Bowen reports, a lot of questions and criticism about where the candidate stands on the issues.
Arnold Schwarzenegger failed to vote in 5 of California's past 11 elections, but a vote he did make in 1994 for a controversial proposition may now hurt him with Latinos. At 17% of registered voters, Latinos may make the difference.
Any politician that has supported 187 really risks losing Latino support.
Prop 187 denied public services to undocumented immigrants. It passed by a huge margin, but was eventually thrown out by the courts. Still, it's a lightning rod issue.
Latino voters remember what Proposition 187 was all about.
300,000 illegal immigrant children in public schools, and they keep coming.
And they remember the man behind it.
It is unfair to the
Pete Wilson, California governor then.
Arnold Schwarzenegger would be a good governor.
And now, co-chairman of Schwarzenegger's campaign. Republican analysts say the whole issue is irrelevant.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is an immigrant.
But Schwarzenegger has yet to explain why he voted for 187.
I mean, we're talking about some very ancient political history in that respect.
And in a race where conventional political wisdom is proven wrong almost daily, the Latino vote may be another example.
Movie stars are like politicians in that they have core constituencies. In the case of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the first person in line to see an Arnold film is a 19-year-old Hispanic male.
Terminator 3.
And when those Hispanic young males vote, they tend to vote Republican. The problem is they don't vote very much at all. The question for Arnold the politician is if he can draw them to the voting booth the way he draws them to the movie theater.
Meantime, sitting governor and recall target Gray Davis is making a visible show of being governor, signing a variety of bills, including one to protect krill, a minute sea creature, and promising to sign a bill he's vetoed twice before that would give driver's licenses to a suddenly popular group, undocumented immigrants. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Whoever wins the head job in California will find it comes with a lot of headaches. A CBS Evening News reality check on the state of the state is coming up next. It's the California poll rush. A tally released today by the state shows 247 people have filed papers to run in the recall election. Why do so many people want to be governor of California? Along with the power and a salary of $175,000 a year come an awful lot of problems. Problems similar to those in many states. Sandra Hughes has a reality check on the state of the state.
Russ Behrens is a dying breed in this state. After 34 years, he is still manufacturing clothing in California. But he's finally giving up, forced out by skyrocketing workers' compensation costs. He'll lay off about 200 workers and move his operation overseas.
Each person here is a family. I mean, it's because there's one person sitting in the machine. It's probably represents 4, 5, or 6 people income, and we're just laying them off.
California's employers paid the highest workers' compensation rates, and employees received the lowest benefits in the nation. Add that to the list of problems that will end up in the lap of the state's next governor.
The things that made California the Golden State no longer exist. We have problems in housing, health care, mass transportation, highways.
How are we doing?
If Governor Davis is recalled, whoever wins will be a neophyte politician with just 30 days to create an administration before taking over the 5th largest economy in the world. This year, most states had to raise taxes or make deep cuts to close budget gaps, but California had the biggest deficit at a whopping $38 billion. And the state's credit rating is near junk bond status. California's next leader will inherit a balanced budget, but it was done so by borrowing billions and deferring expenses. Revenue was increased by raising college tuition statewide. Money was saved by halting construction on a desperately needed new college campus. 16,000 state workers lost jobs, and California's car tax was tripled.
A car tax hurts people. People need their car to go to work.
That is, if they have a job. California has the 8th highest unemployment rate in the nation. Add that to everything else, and it's surprising almost 250 people want their name on the ballot for governor. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Voters in Denver will have a hot issue on their ballots come November. They'll decide whether the city is doing enough to combat stress. The man who forced this item onto the ballot through a petition drive says Denver should ensure domestic tranquility, perhaps by playing soothing music in public places. With former President Charles Taylor now in exile, the civil war in Liberia is beginning to subside. In the battered capital, Liberians came out today to bury their dead and to hunt for scarce food, medicine, and clean water. The U.S. Embassy said Liberian rebels agreed to pull out of Monrovia's port to allow food shipments in. Cleanup is underway at a construction site in northeastern China. 5 drums of mustard gas were found there last week, and 29 people became ill. The gas was left behind by Japanese troops during World War II. In Beijing, authorities used wood chippers to destroy 42 million illegal computer and video discs, part of a crackdown on counterfeiting and smuggling. And in South Korea, a small U.S. Army transport plane crashed a few miles from its base, killing the 2 Americans on board. The cause of the crash is under investigation. A heat wave in Southern California, constant rain in the Northeast. It's been a week of severe summer weather. It was quite a sight in South Florida, a waterspout dancing along the shore on Miami Beach, then sweeping over land and turning into a tornado. No major damage reported. Near Fort Worth, Texas, hail as big as golf balls tore down power lines and tree branches. In the bizarre post-mortem saga of Ted Williams, Sports Illustrated reports some of his DNA has mysteriously disappeared from the cryonics company preserving his remains. SI also reports Williams' torso is stored upright in a liquid nitrogen tank. His head, stored separately, has been shaved, drilled with holes, and accidentally cracked 10 times. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, everybody has a story. Tonight, a woman who believes in serving her community. There are 292 million people in this country, 292 million stories, and CBS's Steve Hartman is telling them one by one in no particular order.
My stories are all chosen completely at random, but I worry sometimes that you won't believe me. Here, especially when they turn out Suzanne Lee, too good to be true.
They call me Miss Lee, they call me Mama Lee, they call me Susie Lee.
Suzanne Lee is 68 and has the hair to show for it, although there's really nothing gray about her.
I'm a sunny person.
She lives in a bright yellow house where she and her husband Monroe raised 4 equally bright children.
I meant what I said, and I said I wasn't going to have any dummies in my house.
We weren't really given a choice.
Every one of her kids graduated from college.
We weren't given many choices in life, period.
To help pay tuition, Suzanne spent 28 years managing the local school cafeteria.
Safe to say it never really got out of your system.
It's never been out of my system.
Today, her den is stocked with fold-up tables that never fold and guests that never seem to leave.
Did you ever think about maybe charging?
No. Everyone is coming.
She has an insatiable need to feed.
This is your refrigerator.
Yes.
And that's your refrigerator.
Yes.
And what's this one for?
This is my spare tire. Hello, everybody.
She feeds her friends. She feeds her former co-workers. She even feeds Vint Partridge,
welcome,
owner of the fanciest restaurant in town.
That macaroni and cheese was good today, wasn't it?
And it can be like this a couple times a week.
Anybody need a salad or something that we didn't give you?
She really has a gift for giving. And when I asked her where she got that, she told me that if I really want to know what Miss Suzanne Lee is all about, then I have to take her home.
We're in Horatio, South Carolina, the town that I was born. Don't blink.
Suzanne Lee's entire family history fits right here in this tiny little town. It's where her father, the son of a former slave, bought the family's very first piece of land.
And somebody wanted to buy this from you?
Oh, yes.
What'd you tell the fella who wanted to buy this
I
from you?
told him the breeze and the trees and the leaves and the birds and the butterfly are worth more than he was offering me for that property.
And even though she needs this property like she needs another frozen rump roast,
Whoa!
Oh, well.
Suzanne Lee plans to keep that land forever as a symbol of the struggle that provided all this bounty. Steve Hartman, CBS News, in Camden, South Carolina.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather, reporting for the CBS Evening News. Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll do it again tomorrow. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, log on to cbsnews.com. Experience CBS News.